Hello, welcome to Mahoosuc Land Trust Habitat for All online gardening class. I'm Barbara Murphy, staff member with Mahoosuc Land Trust. Today, we're going to focus on threats to insects globally and locally. We'll focus on flying insects, which includes the pollinators, that group we know best, the butterflies and the bees. And we're going to talk about Habitat for All, Mahoosuc Land Trust's response to this threat. Today's our first really meaty class. There's so much we can talk about these threats, about how our practices are diminishing insect numbers across the globe. And we'll get to that. Remember, we're new at this, so we may jump around because there might be something really fascinating in the garden that we need to capture today. So as the course goes on and the material list grows, don't feel you need to go step by step by step. Jump to whatever topic interests you. Circle around later. The whole purpose of this course is to inspire you, to have you change your backyard to a pollinator habitat. So we probably should all have a firm agreement on what is habitat. So habitat is a type of natural environment which a particular organism or group of organisms lives so to meet their feeding, their nesting, their mating requirements, all of those types of things. Humans have habitats too, but it would include grocery stores and homes. So we're just going to stay with the natural environment and the things that happen there. In Habitat for All, our first initiative at Valentine Farm was to create a pollinator garden. Habitat for All is a much larger initiative. We are going to be rolling out programs and changes in the landscape over time. But the pollinator garden was where we started. And as I mentioned in the introduction, it is an incredibly fabulous place. You'll see it shortly. There's a lot to observe. So many activities have already taken place there and will continue to do so. We hope you are able to get involved because it's a blast. Gardeners are incredibly generous, fun people to be around. But what I'd like to do is just show you a little bit about that garden evolution, because initially I wondered, would it really make it? The idea for Valentine Farm's pollinator garden came to me in 2017. Valentine Farm is an absolutely beautiful place to visit. It has fields and forests, and it runs along the Androscoggin River. I thought a pollinator garden would add another interesting habitat to an already beautiful place. So in early 2018, I ordered 1,200 transplants, trained a group of phenomenal volunteers, and then proceeded to break every single gardening rule by starting a garden without doing any preparation. We chose a former squash pumpkin field that was way overgrown, and here we are in the spring of 2018, myself and one volunteer, hand turning over a very small part of that garden. While it doesn't look so bad in the picture, it's actually quite filled with quackgrass. To make matters worse, this was day 2, and on day 1, the temperature in May was over 90 degrees. Those volunteers were truly spectacular. We did this for a while, and then we decided this was way too much work. So we invested in landscape fabric, which is the black rolled material that you see, and put it out on the perimeters and in the future area where we thought we were going to plant. Black landscape fabric does a fabulous job heating the soil, killing weeds, and also softening the ground, making future work underneath that much simpler. We left the landscape fabric in place until about mid-July. We rolled it back, and then we planted out those 1,200 transplants that I had purchased earlier in the year. We didn't do a design, we just put them into nursery beds, closely spaced plants in tight rows, where the only goal is that the plants grow and survive through till winter. And we watered and weeded right on through 2018. In the spring of 2019, we came back and we worked like mad people. We moved those transplants into their design places. We added paths, we added a fence, we watered, kept our fingers crossed, and hoped everything would turn out as we anticipated. And weren't we pleased with the results? This is our garden in its first full year in August. Chock-a-block full with a plethora of plants of different shapes and sizes, all benefiting insects of all sorts. There's over 50 species in there. The garden did its magic. It attracted people who were just walking on the path. They came in, they admired the flowers, our good work, and asked how could they too get this effect in their garden. Besides having just random people stop by, we did have specific days open to the public. We announced them and the public would come and once again just fully enjoy the experience of being surrounded by such life. Got their questions answered and raised their enthusiasm levels. It was just delightful to experience. In addition to our public work, we participated in some citizen science, and one of the things we did was tag monarch butterflies. We captured them, applied the tag that you see, took a little bit of data, male, female, what date, where did we catch them, and then we released them. These butterflies migrate to Mexico, and researchers in Mexico then try to find them and determine where they came from, how long it took, that type of a thing. So can you imagine, here in our little garden in Bethel, we are participating in a global study to better understand monarch migration. We hope to continue to do that project in 2020. And finally, we had kids galore come to the garden. It was such a delight to have the first graders from the local elementary school come hunt for caterpillars and chrysalis, have scavenger hunts, and just watch what happens when the wonders of nature are allowed to be explored. It was truly one of the most fun days I've had in an awfully long time. So with all of this abundance happening in our pollinator garden, I'd like to say that insects are everywhere. Unfortunately, globally, insects are on a decline. It came to our kitchen tables and to the popular press when a study was released in 2017. The study was done by a group of highly trained volunteers in Germany. They, over the course from 1989 to 2016, monitored 63 different nature preserves. They captured the insects and weighed them over the course of that time. The results shocked the world. What they found was, in that period of time, insect biomass declined by 75%. No one quite knows what caused all of that. I'm sure it's a multiple of factors, but what we do know is Germany is not unique. Since then, other places around the world have reported significant insect declines, upwards of 80% as well, from tropical rainforests to more developed countries as well. So we're in the midst of a significant decline, but we don't quite understand. But with our Habitat for All program, what we would like to understand, in addition to the decline of insects, is what are the ripple effects of that? And the other species we're looking at with Habitat for All are birds. So when insects decline, what happens to birds? And unfortunately, the scenario is quite similar. So when you have no bugs or fewer bugs, you have no birds or fewer birds. 96% of North American bird species feed insects to their young. So those birds that you're feeding birdseed to rely on that, but when they have young, they switch to needing insects. So for the vast majority of birds that we see, insects are critical. Did you know that caterpillars are a major food source for 310 species of North American birds? Just caterpillars. So insects and birds, they go hand in hand. Another research study came to everyone's attention just in the last year or so, late 2018, early 2019. It was found that since 1970, here in North America alone, almost 3 billion birds have gone missing. Since 1970, within my lifetime. So here's the graphic of that plummet. And let's just take a minute to look specifically at some of the bird groupings that have been hit hardest. When you lose 3 billion birds, that's the equivalent of almost 1 out of every 4 birds. 1 out of every 4. One group, as you can imagine, the aerial insectivores, these are birds that catch flying insects on the wings, have been hit especially hard. 32% of the population is lost. And what brought it home to me was 2 in 5 barn swallows are gone. And it got me thinking, I haven't seen a barn swallow in a while, yet I know I used to see them frequently when I first moved to Western Maine about 20 years ago. So right here in my backyard, I'm experiencing some of that 160 million species of aerial insectivores gone. Boreal forest birds also are declining at a rapid rate, 33% missing. And look at that, grosbeaks, which is a member of this category, 9 in 10 gone. I know I see them at my bird feeder to this day, but you're right, there are fewer of them. So our summers are getting more quiet, our songbirds are disappearing. Unfortunately, humans are not good at noticing diminishment. We only notice loss. So right now we're in a huge period of diminishment, so raising awareness is key. Part of that is we don't know much about insects. They make up more than half of all animal life, but yet we know so little. Of about 4 million species of insects, we only have named and identified about 10% of them. So let's take a step back and say, well, what good are insects? Insects are good for plants, and we all know insects pollinate. They pollinate plants, and as we all are aware of, the statistic is 1 out of every 3 mouthfuls that we take depend on pollination. But insects also pollinate trees and shrubs, and then which allows them to produce fruit and berries, which then feed our birds and other wildlife. So pollination goes beyond the human need. Insects also do plant defense. So as anybody who raises peonies knows, ants are oftentimes on the buds. They aren't there causing harm to the peonies. Rather, they're defending the peonies from being attacked by other insects. So one example of what insects are good for. And of course, insects also help animals. As we just talked about, caterpillars and other insects feed our birds. They feed lots and lots of things, from birds to toads to lizards to unimaginable numbers of animals. And then those animals in turn become food for something else. As the picture on the right shows, that frog that ate insects is now being eaten by a snake. Insects are the base, the foundation of so many organisms' food chain. And without them, the ripple effect just keeps going higher and higher. Insects also provide population control by parasitizing, which means laying eggs in a host, like what you're seeing on the left. That's a parasitic wasp laying an egg into a gypsy moth, which is a scourge of trees up here in Maine. So this is a natural control for gypsy moths. And on the right is another parasitoid wasp, I think it is, laying its eggs on a tomato hornworm. And if you're a gardener, that is a delightful thing to see, that the hornworm will shortly no longer be with us. So population controls of bad things being controlled by good insects. Insects also recycle everything from moving our leaves that we rake into piles and they're gone by the next spring, to disposing of rodents and other mammals that die, or everything that dies, to dung. There are insects that just take care of feces. Insects recycle what was once alive. And by doing that, they return the nutrients back into the soil. So the next time you are thinking about squishing something or swatting away, take a step back and think about, is it necessary, and what roles is this playing besides being an annoyance to me? So what's causing the decline? Research is ongoing. It's ongoing globally, and it's in depth. While there probably isn't one solo thing that's causing it, all of these are contributing. Everything from habitat loss, from buildings in downtown or what used to be open forest area, to habitat loss in the tropics. Large-scale monoculture, which is a prominent form of agriculture, especially here in the United States, where one crop may be grown for miles. The problem is that it's only that crop present. There's no weeds and there is no edge row, so there's no habitat for insects or any other form of life to find sustenance, to find what it needs to live. Of course, pollution of our soils, water, and air just contaminate the environments that insects need to thrive. So just that's a no-brainer. Climate change is the new factor in the block. What happens when temperatures fluctuate, when it's warmer or colder or wetter or drier? How does that affect our insect cycles? Research is pointing that once again, it's not helping out, but it's still early on, data coming in all the time. And then finally, pesticides, and in this case, insecticides, both what we use in our home as well as what is used commercially, both on landscapes as well as in our agricultural environment. They're doing a great job of what they're supposed to do, kill insects. But there's one specific insecticide group that I'd like to talk about a little bit further. Neonicotinoids. That is a large group of insecticides. It's the most widely used pesticide in the world. And for us in the pollinator garden realm, what we're learning is that many of the bedding plants, when we go to our greenhouses to buy plants to put in our pollinator gardens, in many cases, they've been treated with neonicotinoids, either when they were first being grown from a seed on or from a cutting, and that's not necessarily at the place where you bought them, or they've been treated again at the final destination, at the greenhouse or the box store that you've purchased them from. Neonicotinoids are systemic, which means they enter through the root and then the poison goes into every cell of the plant. So that neonicotinoid poison would be in the pollen and the nectar, the very reasons we're growing them to attract our pollinating insects to feed on. So as you can see, that poses a dilemma. How do we grow plants to attract our pollinators and not poison them at the same time? Big box stores such as Lowe's and Home Depot and Walmart did take a pledge that they would not use neonicotinoids on their plants. I don't know if that pledge also covers who they buy their plants from. So I've never seen it clarified, but it's certainly something to look into. A side ripple, I'll call it, of neonicotinoids as well is that many of our agricultural and agronomic crops, the big ones, the corn and the canola, as you see here, the seed is treated. And no matter how careful the grower is, seed always spills on the ground. And what new data coming out right now is showing songbirds will eat that seed. And while they don't die from eating seeds, what their fitness levels are impacted. For example, they may feed less or delay migration, both of which hurt their chances of long-term survival. So neonicotinoids are something to keep your eye on. Do your best to purchase plants that haven't been treated, and we'll just keep an eye on where the research goes. I don't want to end on such a bleak outcome. So let's just end this by talking about a little bit of inspiration. Here are two organizations that have challenged all of us to think bigger and larger about our pollinator gardens. The first one, the Million Pollinator Garden Challenge, started in 2015 to challenge us all in North America to create 1 million gardens. and they met their goal in 2018 and have exceeded that goal. The Pollinator Garden at Valentine Farm has actually been registered with this group. So visit their website, millionpollinatorgardens.org, and get inspired. There's great stories and this incredible map that has pinpoints everywhere, and you can go visit some of those gardens. The second group, the Pollinator Pathway organization, took the Pollinator Garden Challenge and made it go one step further. It challenged all of us to try to connect our pollinator gardens, to make safe pathways where pollinators can find food and shelter and habitat from one garden to the next. So neighbors connected their gardens through their corner associated corners. Maybe you got your community within your library or your school to build one, so that our pollinators can find friendly pathways to stay healthy and migrate. So check out their website as well for more inspiration, pollinatorpathway.org. Thanks so much for joining us today. I hope you learned something, and I hope you are inspired to continue to learn and to maybe make some changes in your own gardening practices or in your landscape. You can see all of the content for all of the classes, including videos and that suggested reading list, by visiting our website, mahoosuc.org, and then click on the Explore drop-down menu. You'll see the title for the class right there. So until next time.